He's called Courage. He was terrified every single episode, and you watched it as a kid. Your parents probably approved it, thinking it was just a weird cartoon. Cartoon Network aired it on Saturday morning, but it wasn't. Because when you pay attention, you'll realize that every single monster in that show was based on something real. Not fictional, not exaggerated, not hyperbolic, not other synonyms for fake. Real psychological conditions. Documented, named, clinical studied, dressed up in a cartoon costume and handed to children. King Ramses, Freaky Fred, Le Quack, the perfect episode. Each one a case file. Each one hiding something that psychologists still reference today. This show wasn't dark by accident. It was dark by design. And once you know what you were actually watching, every episode hits completely different. This video is going to decode all of it, case by case, condition by condition. By the end, you'll never watch this show the same way again. This is the complete dark lore. Let's open the files. Let's start with the first case, the one episode that broke a generation of kids and nobody fully explained why. King Ramses, the Slab. A farmer digs up an ancient Egyptian artifact. Ramses appears, calm, flat, expressionless, and says one sentence, "Return the slab." That's it. 3 plagues follow. The family loses everything. Crops, then the wife, then the farmer himself. Most people remember the CGI face as the scary part. That's not what this episode is actually about. Ramses is a portrait of the psychology of greed and guilt. The farmer stole something. He built comfort on top of it, and now the demand to give it back is arriving, plague by plague, stripping everything away. The farmer has every opportunity to return it. He refuses every time. That refusal is the horror. Psychologists call this cognitive dissonance under guilt. The mind building larger and larger defenses to avoid confronting what it already knows is wrong. The more Ramses asks, the harder the farmer doubles down. He'd rather lose everything than admit the theft. Courage sees this. He tries to return the slab himself. The only character acting rationally, again, is the dog everyone calls a coward. And that pattern is going to repeat across every single case in this file. Now here's where the show shifts from dark into something genuinely disturbing. The second case, Freaky Fred. He arrives smiling. He speaks in rhyme. He's warm, gentle, and friendly. He's Muriel's nephew, which means he belongs there. He has every right to be in that house. And he shaves everything he touches, compulsively, happily. He can't stop. What makes this episode so unsettling isn't Fred's behavior, it's the framing around it. Muriel treats him like a quirky but harmless relative. There's nothing to worry about, he's family. Courage is trapped alone with him. He knows what Fred is doing. He knows it's wrong. There's nobody he can tell. That is the exact psychological architecture of childhood compulsive abuse within a family system. The perpetrator is charming. The adults normalize. The child is isolated with knowledge they have no language for and no safe adult to give it to. Fred never raises his voice. He never threatens. He smiles the entire time. And that's precisely what makes it land so hard. Because the most dangerous characters in real psychology are never the loud ones. Stay with me, because the next case is the one that affects people differently depending on how old they are when they watch it. The third case, Le Quack, the amnesic duck, the con man. He arrives pretending to be a doctor. Muriel has lost her memory. Le Quack positions himself as the only one who can help her, and spends the entire episode systematically isolating her from Courage, rewriting her perception of reality, and extracting whatever value he can before disappearing. This is gaslighting. You've all heard it before. Clinical, textbook, step-by-step gaslighting. Step 1, establish authority. The Quack arrives with credentials and confidence. Muriel trusts him immediately. Step 2, discredit the witness. Every time Courage tries to warn her, Le Quack reframes it. The dog is confused. The dog is the problem. Don't listen to the dog. Step 3, isolate the target. Once Muriel's perception is managed, Quack operates freely. She can't evaluate what's real because she's been told her instincts are wrong. Children watching this episode don't have the vocabulary to name what they're seeing, but they feel it, because a lot of them have already experienced a version of it, from adults, from peers, from family dynamics, and the show just handed them a mirror. That's why Courage the Cowardly Dog terrified children in ways they couldn't explain. The monsters weren't only fictional, they were familiar. Now we need to talk about Eustace, fourth case on our list. Eustace Bagge is not another comic relief. He is the most psychologically precise character in the entire show. He repeatedly frightens Courage with the mask, on purpose, when Courage is already terrified. He calls him stupid dog, every episode without variation. He competes with Courage for Muriel's attention. He withholds warmth as a default position. This is a clinical profile of an emotionally unavailable caregiver with narcissistic behavioral patterns. And here is the part that should genuinely disturb you. Courage saves his life every single episode, without fail, without being asked. He takes the hit, solves the problem, returns Eustace to safety. And Eustace gives him nothing back. Not once, not ever. Psychologists call what Courage is doing anxious attachment behavior. The child keeps performing, keeps proving love through action, keeps hoping that this time the caregiver will finally respond. The caregiver doesn't respond, and the child doesn't stop trying. That dynamic isn't a background detail. That is the emotional core of the entire series. Courage is not afraid of the monsters. Courage is afraid of never being enough for the person who should already love them. If that hits you somewhere specific, you already understand why this show is a psychological document, not just a cartoon. Now here's the episode that the internet has talked about for 20 years and still gets wrong. Our final fifth case file. Episode Perfect. No villain, no monster, no chase sequence. Just a strange figure. Calm, clinical, precise. Who appears to Courage and one by one lists everything wrong with him. His shape, his color, his sound, his size, the way he moves, the way he exists. And Courage listens, quietly. He doesn't run. Then, at the end, he looks at the figure and says, "You're not perfect, and that's okay." And the figure dissolves. Most people see this as a heartwarming lesson about self-acceptance. That's not what this is. This is a documented cognitive behavioral intervention for body dysmorphic disorder. BDD is a mental health condition where the brain fixates on perceived physical flaws, amplifying them, looping on them, making them the entire identity. It affects roughly 2% of the global population and goes severely underdiagnosed. The clinical treatment is not fix the flaw. It is radical acceptance, the deliberate practice act of acknowledging imperfection without letting it define worth. That's what Courage does in that final scene. He doesn't argue, he doesn't improve, he accepts. And then he extends that acceptance back to the thing that was attacking him. That episode aired in 2002 on a children's network, written into the finale of a cartoon dog. And it is one of the most accurate depictions of BDD recovery ever put to screen. So let's pull back now and look at the full picture. Every case in this file follows the same structure. The monster appears, representing guilt, compulsion, gaslighting, attachment disorder, body dysmorphia. The adults can't see it, won't see it, or actively enable it. And Courage, alone and terrified, faces it anyway. The show was built around one central truth. The fear is valid. The problem was never that the child was too sensitive. The problem is the adults stop perceiving what the child still can. Courage never stops being afraid. Not in episode 1, not in the finale. Same tear, same shake, same scream. Every single time. But he moves anyway. That's what the name means, not the absence of fear, action inside of fear. You watched this as a kid and it scared you in ways you couldn't name. Now you know why. It wasn't the CGI face. It was the show depicting something you already knew. That fear is rational, adults don't always protect you, and sometimes the bravest thing you can do is act anyway when you're alone and nobody believes you. 52 episodes, the monsters kept coming. The adults kept failing. The dog kept showing up. That's the lore. That's the whole document. Comment below, which episode hit you the hardest as a kid, and now that you know what it actually meant, does it land differently? And if you want the next case file, shows that even Cartoon Network reportedly flagged for being too psychologically intense for its time slot, subscribe. Courage showed up every time, so will we.